All right. Thank you all for joining us today. We're going to be joining in just a second, but we just have to have a little bit of time to make sure that all of our attendees show up and are in the room. Looks like we're filling up. We'll be starting shortly. Should only be about a minute, but we just want to give it a little bit of time. Thank you all for joining this one. This is a favorite topic for Anthony and I. I think we're going to have a good session today.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
All right. We should have organized music. Apologies that we don't have some light jazz playing at the moment. Okay. Well, probably
Awesome.
about that time.
Yeah,
I'm
I
going to
think we
pass
can.
it to Anthony and let's get started.
Let's get this. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar where we will be diving into the top 5 misconceptions around endpoint security. I'm your host, Anthony LaScala, technical evangelist for SentinelOne, and I'm joined today by SentinelOne senior evangelist, Chris Hosking. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Anthony. Glad to be here. Let's get going.
Awesome.
To start with, just want to cover what we're going to be talking about today. Top 5 misconceptions. It's in the name. There's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to when do you need to upgrade your security, what security is good enough for today, how much money should be invested in security, do the acronyms actually mean something or are they just fancy marketing? So we're going to get into those today. But as much as we tried to get it down to our top 5, we do have some extra things we want to talk about. So after our top 5, we're going to add in some honorable mentions, and then we do have some time at the end for Q&A so that we can get stuck into the meat of things. Let's get going.
Awesome. All right. So some of you may have heard these sayings before. My antivirus is good enough. I operate on Mac, so I can't be hacked. All endpoint security products are the same. Cybersecurity is all fear-mongering. I don't need to upgrade. These and other misconceptions have proliferated across businesses as endpoint protections and the threats they protect against have evolved. Whether the reason is budgetary, operational, or a lack of understanding of the complex endpoint security market, these misconceptions have a profound impact on an organization's security posture, and not in a positive way. Complicating things further are overzealous security marketers who display their often legacy security solutions as the pinnacle of future protection. Combine the above with rapidly advancing threats and adversary sophistication, and you have a threat actor's dream, an underprotected and less informed population of targets. We hope you leave this session feeling more informed or more confident that your endpoint security is sufficient for the current threat landscape. Without further ado, let's jump into our top 5. All right, so misconception number 1, my AV has protected me until now and it will remain effective against current threats. This is reminiscent of the adage, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And this notion that legacy protection tool sets are as effective as modern tools is dangerous. Capturing organizations into a false sense of security that their endpoints are protected and often failing to provide the necessary visibility to confirm this, legacy endpoint protections place businesses in a state of security ignorance. Now, Chris, why are legacy AV solutions not effective against current threats?
The nature of what a current threat is, I think, has changed quite dramatically over the last 10, 15 years. The nature of malware has changed. The rise of fileless malware is a great example of that. AV needs to have a similar evolution to meet the threat landscape evolution. Just a note on, it's protected me until now. Why can't I use the same thing moving forward? I think we need to be cognizant of, it's fantastic for organizations if they haven't had a security incident. That's lucky. Hope and luck aren't a strategy. Now, when it comes to Antivirus is often based on a concept of known good and known bad. It's essentially a great filter against the unwashed, the
Hmm.
threats that are out there. A major issue with that is it puts a primacy on perimeter detection. It puts a real
Hmm.
primacy on like, hey, we're going to be able to block something, and that's it. The reality is that given the strength of threats and given the strength of adversaries, intrusions of different degrees are likely. And so we need to move beyond a model that is robust alone, whether it's either that sort of false positive, you've either blocked it or haven't, to how can we have resilient security? And I think for me, that's really where modern endpoint security, modern enterprise security is at now, is that
Hmm.
it's a variety, it's layered defense measures that provide resilience. So,
Yeah.
for example, not just an ability to negotiate out known good, known bad, but then to look at things through a behavioral lens, to look at things with the context of time added as well. Of like, hey, one or two small things might not be enough to be labeled as bad, but within the context of three things in a row, that is bad. Okay, well then let's take action. I think that's really key for me is modern enterprise security is about layered defense, and it's also about resilience rather than robustness.
Yeah, no, those are great points, Chris. And what you were saying initially there too, a stagnant security program is falling behind because the threats haven't been stagnant. The threats are evolving. They are continuing to become more sophisticated, more challenging to detect, more challenging to contain and mitigate. And a legacy AV solution just isn't up to that task. But you did say something there that really leads into my next question for you really well, which is layered approach to defense. Now, is there a place for this legacy or signature based AV in a modern environment?
So I will say signatures and hunting for hashes absolutely has a place. I wouldn't want to only rely on a signature based solution, but the idea of categorizing known good and known bad, and even better, what do we think is likely bad given what we stand about known bad, that has tremendous value because what it does is it out a whole chunk of noise at the top of your filter, so to speak. If we're talking about layered defense, it's so important to have that first cut where we
Mm-hmm.
can say absolutely not to everything that's known bad and
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not to everything that walks like, talks like, smells like, quacks like known bad. But
Mm-hmm.
now we're going to have other security measures in place. And in addition to other security measures in place, security tooling that goes beyond categorizing of good and bad. Tooling like incident response
Yeah.
and case management and threat hunting. And that's where modern modern enterprise security and modern endpoint security really shines.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's the transition of legacy AV from the solution to a layer of the solution that is now required to be able to face these more modern threats. You also hit something there really, really important, which is incident response capabilities. Now, this is something that we really haven't seen, or it really doesn't exist within the legacy AV archetype of antivirus software, where it really is just that filter of known good versus known bad. It's lacking a lot of that remediation incident response apparatus so that you can identify and effectively contain an incident when it happens. So, what, in your view, Chris, why is having incident response capabilities critical in the current threat atmosphere?
So often we talk about threats in the terms of stopping them as soon as they start.
Mm.
But the reality is, some of the most successful attacks um, come apparent when they make more noise, which is often later on down within the context of an attack. Specifically, a lot of attackers will look to perform sophisticated discovery for quite a while before they then attempt lateral movement, before they attempt impact. And keep in mind, this could start from an unmanaged endpoint. So
Mm.
you potentially have an intrusion within your network on an unmanaged endpoint through which an attacker is able to perform their discovery. If I'm lacking in response tools, if I'm lacking an in-depth understanding of my environment through time, I'm going to miss an ability to network contain or isolate host when that becomes most necessary on the day of, but also perhaps on week 3 when things start to get really dicey.
Yeah, exactly. The threat actors are living in these environments for weeks to months at this point to collect information and prepare to execute these attacks. That, yeah, when they start to execute these attacks, maybe that would pop on some legacy AV solution that, hey, it's getting noisy, some things are starting to happen. But where we really want to be in, a modern environment is identifying when that intrusion is occurring through the correlation of different aspects, different assets within the environment, so that we're seeing that full picture of what's going on and able to actually respond and contain that incident before that threat actor gets to actually execute their payload.
And if there is an execution of the payload, having the ability to roll back, for example, to talk about a really popular Sentinel-1 capability, which is ideal for environments where there has been limited success, to hit the reset button on the success of our adversaries.
Yeah, exactly. And all that is assuming that the threat actually is able to make it through, which is definitely a rarity. All right, so we could keep talking about this, but I want to go ahead and move on to our next misconception, which is my current solution is just as effective in my remote first environment. Now, some of you listening might be, okay, well, we just kind of talked about how one solution is not as effective, but we wanted to also reframe this in terms of the transition to remote work that we all went through during the COVID-19 pandemic. That was a massive turning point for security, the dissolution of the traditional network perimeter. And it really required organizations of all shapes and sizes to reassess and redo how they go about their normal business operations. This change from a more centralized environment and office setting within that traditional network perimeter to a more decentralized footing with disparate users, identities, applications, and endpoints has definitely opened up some serious concerns for security within those environments. And I want us to walk through some of those risks to begin with, and maybe we'll get into some of those gaps that legacy AV just can't handle in these new environments. But to start, what are some of those risks areas that were introduced with remote first working environments, Chris?
I think it's actually worthwhile starting with one of the chief risks was a human risk of us all not being in an office. You get a bit of a deterioration of the human firewall, of being able to like enforce a security policy. That might be a little bit easier when you're all in the office. I certainly know security managers that like to roam around the halls shutting laptops if they're open and unlocked. So we've got a more challenging environment for security enforcement. We also have a deterioration of traditional security measures designed for an office and a core network. We now have multiple routes of access, multiple ingress points, VPN, to allow an audience, or sorry, a set of employees that are spread out to perform their same jobs. So we've now got an environment that is harder to secure, that is easier to hide in, and a deterioration of the human firewall. In addition to that, we're now more heavily relying on things like SaaS. We're more heavily relying on perhaps multiple factor, MFA and different approaches to confirming your identity and ensuring you are an employee. But it's certainly opening up a lot of avenues for adversaries to perform abuse and to take advantage of.
Yeah, exactly. And we're seeing this transition from primarily on-prem environments to cloud-focused environments that make heavy use of SaaS applications before the COVID-19 pandemic. However, when we moved to that remote first setting globally, essentially, it really expedited that process. Companies really leaned on SaaS applications more heavily. And one of the critical elements of that is SaaS applications are publicly accessible. The login prompt for SaaS application you use, a line of business application that you may be using, is accessible from the internet. And that's required so that the remote users can be able to access. But that also opens up a lot more risk that there is just that login prompt, just that identity protection through either MFA or other identity protections and conditional access that may be implemented that is protecting, or that basically that firewall between the threat actors on the public internet and your company data. Now, we see some of these gaps. The environment has sprawled out because the users are now remote in disparate locations. What are some of the key gap areas for legacy AV solutions in remote first environments? Where are they falling short in these new environments?
Top off the line for me has got to be identity. Understanding the role of identity within the context of behavior on endpoints and behavior through the web and behavior on SaaS, that's often completely missing from legacy AV. And that's become a major, not just target for adversaries, but root for adversaries and source of abuse for adversaries, right? So for me, it's certainly identity, and then the next would be any understanding of correlating endpoint activity and identity activity with SaaS activity and SaaS posture. The ability to contextualize that and correlate that together, creating a parser across that data in your seam of choice or across a data lake, or however your approach is to hunting through an environment. That's incredibly difficult with legacy AV, I'd say.
Yeah, well, incredibly difficult with legacy AV outright, but with the traditional SIEM and say, disparate security solutions, you could link them all together with some sort of SIEM solution to build a cohesive security program. But especially with the legacy AV solutions, you're going to be hitting a lot of roadblocks, a lot of challenges with those integrations. Whereas moving to maybe a more unified platform, a more modern platform would be a lot easier to use. And I know we're going to be talking about unified platforms here in just a little bit. But I do definitely agree with you there, Chris. Identity, tracking identities throughout the environment, what they're doing, their authentications, all of that it's really important in this kind of remote first footing that we're in now. And I think we've already started to answer the last question that I had for this slide, which is, are endpoints the primary access vector for a remote first environment? Which we've already started to really lean into identity here. And I'm actually gonna kick this one down, Chris, because identity really has turned into the control plane for security. With the transition to remote work, identities are the keys to the kingdom. They are what give access to those SaaS applications that hold company data, to the VPN configuration that enables a remote user to connect to the core corporate network. So this move to this remote first footing has really shifted where the focus needs to be applied in terms of security, from strictly endpoint to the correlation of endpoint protections with identity protections, with cloud and SaaS protections as well. Do you have anything to add to that, Chris?
No, I think that's bang on. Let's head to the next.
Awesome. Misconception number 3 is endpoint protection is an IT problem. Now, this is a similar misconception to cybersecurity as an IT problem. Endpoint and environment cybersecurity protections need to be a top concern of everyone, but particularly executives. Now, Chris, why is it important that executives take a leadership role in cybersecurity?
I think we all need leadership, not to sound lame, but there's things that can be, part of the carpet wall paint, and there's things that we need to have leaders for, and there's things that we need to have structured programs for, and security is really one of those. If we relegate security to being a loss leader within the business, something that's annoying, something that gets in the way of things, it will be undermined, it will be passed around. I mean, I obviously love talking about all things cloud security, so I would love to tear this conversation away from endpoints and talk about cloud and containers. But even then, there's a great example of, DevOps and love to skirt around security practices that cloud security architects are putting in place.
Oh yeah.
Executives need to be a part of security so that effective security can flourish. I truly believe, and for it to become a service to an organization.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Executive sponsorship is a core tenet of a strong security program. Not only does it help to have a leader lead from the front in terms of cybersecurity, but what that really does is start to inspire a culture of security within the organization. Seeing top executives, top leaders within the company have a focus and prioritizing cybersecurity does have a trickle-down effect to the users, making them more aware and strengthening, like you said earlier, that human firewall, the strengthening the users' understanding and knowledge around cybersecurity, so they are better prepared to face the social engineering threats that they are going to be facing today.
And I think just to add on here, it's worthwhile adding that leadership isn't about creating a culture of there are no fails. Leadership is creating a culture of this is everyone's job together.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're ensuring, again, resilience versus robustness. We need a culture where failure is accepted, because at some point there will be security failures. There will be an email that needs to be reported. There will be social engineering attempts made potentially via LinkedIn laws. There will be things accidentally clicked, or there will be fishy behavior. So we need to have executive sponsorship all the way down to say, hey, if there is something, we talk about it, because we have a culture where we are resilient.
We talk about it, we identify what went wrong, and we make the necessary changes to strengthen the security program as a result. Awesome. Well, now let's break it down a little bit further. So, okay, executive sponsorship, it's a requirement. If you're going to have a strong security program, you have to have a leader out front that is going to effectively lead it. But when we get to the nuts and bolts of actually doing the work, where do the different responsibilities lie between the cybersecurity team, the IT team, and the executive sponsor?
So for me, security is about ensuring we have the capabilities to operate an effective defense, but also to respond when there is an alert, when there is an incident. So for me, that is detection and response. It is in ensuring that we have an ability to understand activity, understand behavior, which is only possible through modern enterprise security, through like modern EDR, modern XDR, to understand activity across a fabric of services that isn't just endpoint, that is cloud, that is SaaS. For me, security is about detection and response. Where IT starts to get involved often is in remediation. If something, if we've got a golden image that needs to be fixed, that we need to have IT as part of that. We need infrastructure as part of that. We need network often as part of that. If we're some known malicious IPs that crop up as a result of security, well, then we need some back and forth between security and network potentially. And then finally, executives, as we talked about originally, to perform leadership through that whole thing, and to be ready if they need to step up to the plate. Because in worst case scenarios, it's the executives that have to get up and have the hard conversations, or end up in front of Congress having even harder conversations. So we need executives that can keep everyone calm, that can man/will man the ship, and keep us heading in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit a point that I was going to make on the head, which was the decision makers, the executives, the leaders in incident response scenarios, they are the ones that are often making the decisions, having those tough conversations, making those tough calls, because they're also the ones that are going to have to face the music if something doesn't go according to plan. They're the ones that are going to have to speak to, depending on the organization, the press, Congress, whoever it may be, the governing body there. And yeah, honestly, I completely agree with your take here. I think that security really owns it's that administration of the security tool sets and the response to incidents. And then the baton is passed over to IT for post-containment remediation. If a system needs to be wiped and re-imaged, IT is going to be able to handle that. But at that point, the threat should already be contained. That's the security team's role. Now, we've talked about the different roles. We've talked a lot about executives. Now, is executive sponsorship alone enough to develop a strong security culture?
No, I don't think so. I do think it takes everyone, but I think it's also ensuring that actions are taken. Like words are one thing, policies are another. We need to ensure that policies are made and that policies are followed. Because, certainly having hand waving alone isn't good enough. We need policies that are followed, policies that are enforced.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Cybersecurity policies without teeth are just words on paper. This might be a hot take here, but I have always said that cybersecurity policies and cybersecurity should be factored into performance evaluations. If you are consistently putting the organization at risk due to you're falling for phishing emails or you've been socially engineered, that needs to be a factor because that is introducing more risk to the environment. And we as IT, as security, as leaders, we need to be making sure that we're providing all of our users the tools necessary to be able to understand the current threat landscape and be able to defend reasonably against it.
Absolutely.
We can move on over to misconception number 4. I have several security tools in the environment. My bases are covered. Now, security solution breadth does not equal security. An organization can have more security tools than it has staff and remain insecure. When analyzing an environment with a plethora of security tools, the question is not about what asset class is unprotected, but where are the visibility gaps and all the noise and the extraneous solutions not providing value. Now, why is having too many security tools in an environment actually detrimental to security?
Just because we're stacking things up doesn't mean we've stacked the benefits.
Mm-hmm.
The unfortunate reality of a lot of security tools is that they offer a phenomenal amount of noise and varying amounts of signals.
Mm-hmm.
As we stack tools, we're often really stacking the amount of data that we have to get through. So we've got issues there of log ingestion and log parsing and being able to understand all of that at speed, but we're magnifying the inherent problems of noise versus signal. There's also problems of missing often context through too many screens. There's very rarely is it one tool to solve them all.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't the one ring of security solutions, but certainly we can say that having too many security solutions can cause significant issues.
Yeah, well, not just in noise pollution as well, and how much noise and alert fatigue is being imparted onto the analysts that are having to deal with that environment. But you're also increasing the overall difficulty of administration as well. When you have dozens of security tool sets in your environment, you're either spending a lot of time integrating those into a SIM solution or one centralized location so that the analyst can effectively perform their job, that is a ton of effort to maintain, or you're not integrating them, and then you are opening up massive visibility gaps within your environment because the analyst then, instead of having one tool to check, they have 15, 20 tools that they have to go and check to try and correlate and pull together the pieces of an attack story. But this isn't where we're at today, though. This is really where a lot of legacy solutions stand, but it doesn't have to be this way. Chris, what is your take on an alternative to this?
Certainly, there's an opportunity to consolidate a lot of disparate security points.
Mm-hmm.
There's phenomenal security platforms available in market. I've got SentinelOne on the chest and on
I was
the
going to
logo.
say, I know about one.
Yeah. So obviously, I'd be more than happy to talk about the genuine leadership that SentinelOne has in the enterprise security space, with a focus not only on endpoint security but identity security, cloud security, to have an answer for the underlying issue of how do I navigate big data and separate data sources, to be able to do that through a conversational interface that has agentic qualities like follow-up questions for my SOC flow and self-documentation and all of that. But essentially, the opportunity here is, how can you solve multiple problems in the one space? How can we bring everything into one platform for detection and response and remediation? And SentinelOne is a true leader there.
Oh, yeah.
With our partners as well, because obviously SentinelOne isn't the single security vendor. We have phenomenal partnerships
Just
with network security providers, for example, with email security providers, but certainly when it comes to many pieces of the puzzle and then being able to tie together a security ecosystem, a data inherent approach is best and a platform approach is best, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to create a little divide here as well, because we just talked about how with legacy solutions and disparate solutions, you can kind of compile those into a centralized point like a SIM solution. And you can do that. The difference here is going to be one in ease of use of that end solution. When you're working with legacy solutions, oftentimes they're not as easy to use as some of the newer and more UX UI focused solutions that are more modern today. But with a modern solution, the integrations and the maintenance and administration time are also significantly reduced, because you're starting with a more modern infrastructure and that data first approach, that with these platforms that are really, really tailored towards compiling and combining all of this information in a modern environment with today's technology. You're not having to fight through legacy or niche integrations just to get the data into an old SIM solution. That's why having a modern platform is so important nowadays. Now, we often see gaps in security programs filled with another solution. Like, this is something we see really regularly. Why is this not necessarily the best approach in terms of like, hey, I have a gap in my identity security right now, so I'm going to go and get an identity security solution and just plug it in? Why is that not the best approach? What's maybe a better approach to approaching that problem?
I think inherently it comes down to, that's a particularly reactive approach to security. It's there's another baby on the way, let's build another entire room, even though we may not have the permit for it, we may not have the tools and resources for it. It would be a stress on the family to have to build manually another one. It's like, often it's about reassessing what your security needs are. Is adding another tool going to actually take the pain off of your security analysts of filling in gap, or is it going to give them additional training needs? Is that going to add to the noise problem? Are you going to, by having disparate solutions because you're adding things on, start to have issues of visibility between them? I think it's worthwhile looking at what is the challenge and inherently what approach is required. And that's where I think we need to look at context and correlation and data are king. So how do you solve that problem?
Yep, exactly. What you said on reactive is perfect. When you see a gap in the environment and you just slap another solution on it, it is reactive. Oftentimes it's haphazard. And what you really need to do when you see a gap in the security fabric of your organization is take a step back and reassess, perform a business impact analysis, review the entirety of your security program and develop a cohesive strategy for implementing security within your organization rather than any kind of like slapdash solution implementations. This should all form into that cohesive, unified, and correlated strategy. Now, this is misconception number 4. I think we're ready for number 5.
Let's do it. Lucky luck.
AI is not ready for security. Misconception number 5. Now, we're going to have a lot to talk about this because AI is really cool, and Sentinel-1 has some really cool AI capabilities. But to get us started, like, security professionals, we're paranoid by default. It's a side effect of being in the industry. AI has been involved in endpoint protection to some extent for over a decade, with machine learning and pattern recognition capabilities baked into the first NGAV solutions to hit the market. This integration of machine learning is what enabled businesses to defend against ransomware and novel threats, representing a significant advancement in endpoint protection. The integration of more recent AI capabilities into protection suites is the next iteration of endpoint security. Modern EDR. So I want us to get started here on talking about AI and this misconception of AI is not ready for security to really get to the same level as some of our other security professionals. We hear you guys, we're paranoid about it too. But we're at a point now where we really need to look at the risks and align and balance them out with the risks that are posed by threat actors as well. So what are some of the concerns around integrating AI into security tools from the blue team, from the analyst, from the business leader perspective, Chris?
A lot of people have the assumption that a security provider has leveraged their understanding of all of their customers' threats to build an LLM that is going to help with security. So leakage of specific IP is a concern that we hear a lot of, which is simply not true, but that's a concern that we hear a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the classic AI issues that we're running into when we're leveraging AI ourselves in our daily lives. Of people are concerned about hallucinations often.
Mm-hmm.
People are concerned that AI might take actions that they wouldn't themselves take.
And so,
you know,
and that's
AI
for like agentic, right? For agentic is like when they would be taking action.
Exactly. And so that's a concern we hear often is I'm going to have a Terminator awaken in my security solution, and it's going to misrepresent us at insecurity, but it might also misrepresent my brand.
Yep, absolutely. And these are all valid concerns. Like, it is understandable why, especially security professionals, with seeing all of the different concerns around AI as AI has been developed, to be conscious and somewhat concerned about the implementation of AI within their security tooling itself. When I'm talking about some of these risks, I really do look at it in these two separate buckets, which is generative AI and agentic AI. Generative AI, you have your LLMs, they're providing some context for you. Maybe they're pulling in some auto investigation or pulling in additional information about the alert wherever possible. Maybe they're summarizing things to give the analyst more of a head start on responding to an incident. And so these implementations of generative AI are extremely beneficial, and they do still carry some of those concerns, but we're going to get to in just a second here why we think the scales need a little bit of rebalancing in terms of AI within security tool sets. And the last piece I'll say on agentic is really where you start to hit the concerns of, that the Skynet activating on you, and you end up with rogue security agents that may be enacting some sort of containment procedure off of bad information or a bad inference. And so those concerns are definitely warranted, but we're going to dive into here in just a second the why we need to rebalance those. So exactly on that, Chris, why are these concerns, valid as they may be, no longer sufficient for where we're at in the current threat landscape?
Well, it's worthwhile first establishing that a lot of these are fears, and
Mm-hmm.
fears are based in the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
SentinelOne is more than happy to talk about how we've built our um, supervised ML, how we've built our unsupervised ML, how we leverage our LLM, what models are ours, where do we leverage other technologies,
Mm-hmm.
how we built our agentic capabilities, how our RAG functions, what are the things that we're doing to ensure that it is incredibly safe. Data privacy is of the extreme importance to us. So, first of all, we're happy to combat fears with knowledge, and we're
Mm-hmm.
an open book here, and we certainly are an open book when it comes to AI as well. We really fear the black box of not knowing how a decision has been reached
Mm-hmm.
through agentic analyst that's making or providing an understanding of security. But so first of all, we're happy to alleviate fear
Absolutely.
with understanding. But the reason why we need to get over this fear is because AI is required.
Mm-hmm.
We're at a point where AI is being leveraged by adversaries across the threat landscape. If we have machine speed offense, we require machine speed defense. Otherwise, we're going to be inherently short and we're going to be inherently at the mercy of attackers. So AI is required at this point.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, our adversaries have adopted and are utilizing AI as quickly as possible and at a much faster rate than a lot of corporations are adopting AI for their defense. And so, in an age where attacks are coming at you at machine speed, you need to have a machine speed defender that is there ready to catch them. All right, we could keep talking about AI for literally days, but we want to go
We'll have
ahead
to do
and
that
hit.
as a separate a webinar, and there's a phenomenal amount to talk about SentinelOne's capabilities in this space with Purple AI, isn't there?
Yep. Oh yeah. Oh, we could, like I said, we could literally talk for days, but I don't want to hold everyone on this webinar for the next 24 hours. So let's go ahead and hit our honorable mentions, and we'll hit our QA. All right. So we wanted to cap off the webinar with a few honorable mentions that did not make the top list. So number one on this is Mac systems are not susceptible to malware. And now this is primarily thanks to Apple's 2006 viruses commercial. This misconception really grew from there that Macs are just not susceptible to malware. And it's just not true. Malware and viruses are developed for all types of operating systems, including Mac OS, Linux, Windows, iOS, Android, even IoT-based operating systems have malware that is designed for them. So the notion that Macs are not susceptible to malware is just plain wrong.
And the same goes for Linux as well, for those of you out there that might be dealing with cloud environments.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Number two, I will need to hire a SOC to run a modern tool. Certainly, there have been a few EDR solutions in market that have been designed to get all information humanly possible under the sun, so that it is available for full SOC teams to get everything at their fingertips that they need. SentinelOne's approach has always been, how can we create technology that's going to accelerate processes and create net new processes that improves people's lives, in many cases security teams' lives. SentinelOne isn't built to require a whole SOC. It's built to be intuitive to understand. It's built to be easy to use. It's built to be quick to onboard and quick time to value. I don't believe that modern tools require an entire SOC. That being said, security does need humans and security does need training. So there's a balance to that, but I don't think that you need to necessarily fear needing for a small organization a 10-person team that works 24/7.
Yeah, exactly. Like that 10-person team that works 24/7 is ideal. Absolutely. Like that's the best possible scenario to be in is with a strong security program, having it effectively monitored. But that it's not a requirement. And having a modern tool that is more inclined to be more efficient and more user-friendly is going to enable internal organizations to reach their security goals without the extra expenses of hiring a SOC necessarily right out of the bat. It's going to be different for each organization, but absolutely. The next one is endpoint protection is a one-time project. So endpoint protection, really much like cybersecurity as a whole, it's a program. The days of set it and forget it methodologies around antivirus software are long gone. We saw that a bit with legacy solutions, the signature-based solutions. It was more of set and forget because it was that filter, like you were saying, known good, known bad, and there was no incident response apparatus. But that is just not sufficient for today's threats that we're having. That visibility and that incident response capability is so critical just to be able to maintain the overall security of your organization.
Agreed. Last, but certainly not least, we're saving money by not upgrading. I'd say yes. If you're using ClamAV for free, you are absolutely saving money. Like that, it's undoubtable. Like I'm not here to say that open source solution or a solution from 20 years ago is cheaper, and that's not true. They are cheaper. It's also wholly inappropriate, and it goes back to sort of the thing of like hope not being strategy, luck not being a strategy.
Yep.
I think security requires investment.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's not necessarily just about like, hey, let's give ourselves endless budgets and buy the most expensive tool out there. I think it's about understanding what you need to invest in terms of your humans and what technology they require to get the job done. And I think that goes a little bit back to what we were previously talking about. We're like, let's give them tools that empower them, accelerate them, that are platform approach and data and data focused. Because in the long run, every dollar spent on security that's spent well is money well spent, I believe.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we're already seeing that. Well, what you're actually not seeing when you have a legacy solution is what's going on in your environment. You're missing some of that visibility. You may not have the tools to understand or know if you are compromised or not. And this is, there is a financial cost to security incidents. Actually, IBM's cost of a data breach report just came out, and it's still at $4.44 million on average per data breach. And a little important note that I wanted to also call out here is that's actually a decline from last year. We are actually declining because the average cost of a data breach is declining because of AI-empowered defenses. As organizations adopt defenses that can respond more quickly and contain incidents more quickly, the actual average cost of the data breach is actually dropping, which we haven't seen happen yet, which is just fantastic. All right. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and hanging in there as we went through all of our different misconceptions that we wanted to hit. I know Chris and I can just talk for days. We're now in a spot over to our Q&A. I want to say thank you guys for joining the webinar today. If you find yourself subscribing to any of the misconceptions that we talked about today, it's really time for that security review. Reach out to us, schedule a demo, and we'll show you how a true modern EDR can really elevate your organization's security. So go ahead and use the QA box in the webinar console. If you have any questions, happy to respond to them.
Thank you, team.